A game one loss, 115-110. The Phoenix Suns go down to the Los Angeles Clippers. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, what went wrong? Why were the vibes off? Who won the superstar battle? And more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Suns your first listen to start your week after a tough Suns loss in Game 1. You're here anyway. Thank you. You can follow and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are on YouTube, hit that bell down below, get a notification when a new show goes up, and be able to comment down below. You can also follow along at Locked On PHX Suns, where you can join in on the 7 words or less game take, which is back for the playoffs. We have a lot of Monty hate, which I just won't, honestly, I don't know if I'm allowed to read some of it here on the podcast, to be completely honest with you, but we have Jeff Homer at HomerG29 saying poor shooting early gives Clippers belief. We have Jordan Yaden at Yaden96, slow start, third quarter lineup, DA rebound with that exclamation mark at the end, emphasizing his point. That does not count as a word, so that is fair game. You can always hang out on Twitter during games and during these fun playoff series. That's a great way to interact with the show, in addition to listening, being an everydayer, and following along with your favorite team. Brandon Dueñas is joining us today after this Suns loss to break it all down. We'll do a quick vibe check on why everything felt so weird, what happened with the coaching decisions, superstar battle, and more. Today's show, guys, before we kick off, is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. All right, Brandon. So I want to start with vibe check. Sounds like silly, but it really is kind of where I want to start, because I was a little cocky, I think, previewing this series, but I was also doing it to make a point. Like I said multiple times going in, the Suns should try to play this series in such a way that they don't have to adjust. There are versions of this series, I thought, where the Suns could be so dominant that the game and the series would be played on their terms. And that's really what I meant. And you can feel in a playoff game immediately which team's terms it's being played on. Which coach's terms, which superstars' terms, the stylistic way that the game plays out tends to go in one direction or the other. I thought the Suns could have the control of that. But from the jump in this one, I would even say, like I usually do moments of the game before at the beginning of each recap show. We won't do that tonight, but you honestly could say the minute that starting lineups came out was the moment of tonight's game. I thought Torrey Craig played awesome, but it was a little bit eyebrow-raising to me that they would adjust before the game ever even happened because of what I just said. And so I was very wrong, obviously. They felt like they needed to do a lot of different things. They did that. And I feel like the offense, it just didn't feel right. And we can get into those things separately, but let's start with the lineups and just the vibes and how weird that first quarter was and everything else. What was going through your mind as you were watching the first few minutes of the game and noticing the awkwardness, the weirdness, the changes, everything?
Yeah, I mean, it just looked like a team that's only played 8 games together. And, you know, they had some stretches where it looked like they had some things figured out, and they looked like in that third quarter run, they looked like a championship contender. That just looked like a death lineup in terms of like what we saw with the Golden State Warriors, where they just went on a run and the game just felt like it was almost not over, but it seemed like they were going to just take the Clippers by storm. But the Clippers answered. They came right back, and the Suns, just like you said, there was no the rhythm was just off. That's just kind of the main thing. Offensively, I feel like the Clippers kept it pretty simple. It looked like the Suns were trying to do too much offensively, and I think some of the lineup changes that we saw that could be a factor, along with just the limited reps they have together. So it was a lot of things. You know, losing game one sucks. The series is not over though. I know this is new territory for a lot of these like newer Suns fans because their last 6 playoff series, they took game 1 in all those. So, you have to realize that, this team, it's going to take some time to click. But overall, I thought it was kind of just sort of what we expected. They just didn't close out the game how we thought they would, because it came down to crunch time. That's what it came down to, and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it kind of did. I saw somebody tweet, though, that the Clippers were winning at the end of each quarter, which was kind of crazy. And we'll talk about that third quarter, I think, in detail, because that was the Suns' opportunity. They were on, like, at one point I looked it up, it was like a 35-16 run from the end of the second half through the first, half of the third quarter. And right as I looked it up, I guess I probably owe everybody an apology. I literally looked it up, and then the Clippers scored like 6 straight points, and I was like, okay, not much of a run to tell anybody about at this point. And then, they end up taking the lead back by the end of the third quarter. But it's weird because I do feel like Craig played really well, and you could see what they wanted to do because the Suns were correct. And like, I think there's a world, honestly, where we look at the adjustment that they made and we feel like, wow, Monty made such a smart decision there. What a predictive, insightful, first chess move, because they knew, they got it right, that Craig was going to be guarded by Ivica Zubac, and they were ready to use Craig as a screener. I thought this was one of the best games that Torrey Craig played as a Sun. Obviously, we knew from a defensive standpoint he was going to be able to defend Kawhi Leonard maybe better than Josh Okogie would, so that didn't surprise me when I saw the starting lineups come out. But the way that they were ready and comfortable using him offensively was good. But I think, to your point, it kind of looked like it took them out of their comfort zone a little bit. And to me, maybe the best way to sum that up is, I felt like this was one of the games in Chris Paul's career where he has touched the ball the least. He just it didn't feel like anything was running through Chris Paul tonight. And that's a very weird thing to do in game 1 of not only this series, but game 1 of what you hope is a title chase. To go so starkly. I know he's been off ball a little more lately to end the regular season, but that's still your bread and butter. And they just kind of moved off of it. And they put the ball in Durant's hands and Booker's hands.
Yeah, and it was just kind of weird because the times he did get the ball, it seemed like he was almost forcing a shot a little bit, which is very un-CP3-like. And in the moments when it seemed like they needed to get Durant the ball, they weren't. So it was just kind of like you said, just the rhythm, the flow, everything just felt a little bit off other than those couple of runs they went on. And that's just a chemistry thing. And we knew we were going to see this, but it just comes down to getting more reps, getting comfortable with each other. So, these close games, you got to win come playoff time. Obviously you only have, it's a best of 7. So they don't really have a lot more of room to experiment with some of this stuff, but so they got to figure it out pretty quick. But I think tonight was a great learning experience just for them to go back and just, figure out what they need to adjust going forward. And hopefully, these guys are basketball junkies. They're going to figure it out. And I think we're going to see a few adjustments that will counter what the Clippers threw at them, because it seems like, Ty Lue had a very simple plan. They wanted to, and Torrey Craig rose to the occasion. Like you said, it was one of his best games he's had, whether you agree or disagree with the lineup change. And I'm with you. I'm not a huge fan of it. I didn't think it was, it's not what I would have done personally. I would have kept Okogie in there just because
you can still close with Craig, right? I think that's exactly part of it. And you look at Okogie, it's hard for him to find a role with players that aren't as good as the starters. It's not just what the starting lineup, how that changes, but it's Okogie's not going to be as good playing off of the bench because those guys aren't going to set him up for the same quality of shots. They're not going to line his responsibilities up to be very specific. He has to do a little more, which makes him less valuable. The trickle downs happen. But you were talking about Ty Lue's plan too. What did you think of that?
It just seemed like they're funneling everything to Torrey Craig, make a decision, make a shot. And that's going to be the common theme, I think, is whoever that fifth starter is, whether it's Craig or Okogie or, Terrence Ross, who Monty hinted at getting more minutes in the future series. It seems like they're going to kind of force the Suns to play through them instead of their stars. And that's like we talked about just previewing the series, they want to muddy it up. They want to make it ugly. And that's one way to do it. Just take the Suns out of their typical sets. And, Okogie only getting 6 minutes is pretty shocking to me, honestly. This feels like a series that they're going to need him in. So to me, that was the biggest surprise. Like we've said, Craig played awesome, like tip my hat to him. But I think Okogie has to be more of a factor. And Shamet getting 23 minutes in a game where he really wasn't, the shot wasn't falling. I think he's fine in the rotation because the idea of him, providing floor spacing and hustling on the defensive end, something they need. But if the shot's not falling, then, they got to make some adjustments quick. And I thought Okogie is right there. They could have used that energy, offensive rebounding, getting the second chance points. That was a difference because the Clippers had 5 more second chance points than the Suns. They lost by 5. So that's a game right there, and I'm not saying, that would have shifted that dramatically if Okogie was in, but I think he could have generated a couple more possessions. Maybe got the crowd more involved in moments that the energy was kind of dead. So I think him and Craig can both coexist against the Clippers, and they'll need to. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I think we can dive into some more of that rotation, offense in the last segment. I want to do something called instinctive adjustments, where we just do like right after, I'm going to rewatch the game tomorrow, but I have not yet. What do we think should be different? And look like fools when the game actually happens and have some fun there. But I want to talk about Kawhi, Russ, Durant, and Booker, the 4 superstars outside of Chris Paul who were on the court tonight. And what did they do well? What did they not do well? And basically, how did that decide the game? Because it really did, and that tends to be the case in the NBA. So we'll get into all those guys next. First, guys, today's show brought to you by PrizePicks. And PrizePicks basically came in, they fixed daily fantasy sports. That's the bottom line here. We've all played daily fantasy before. We've all lost at daily fantasy before. I think that it's safe to say, because that tends to be what happens. You end up with somebody where, yeah, you feel good about your lineup. Maybe you even read a couple articles, and then all of a sudden some, sharp in who knows what country beats you because it's actually their full-time job. Or you end up in a league or something else where you're just screwed, a pool where there's millions of people and you have no chance to win. PrizePicks makes it simple. They make it easy. 2 to 6 players, and you pick, will they go more or less than their PrizePicks projection? That's it. And you can win up to 25 times your money. They have all sports, not just basketball. They have pro and college football, pro and college baseball. They even have some more out there sports like tennis, MMA, cricket. If you're into that, entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and PrizePicks is currently operational in over 30 states, including Arizona, as well as Canada. So download the PrizePicks app now or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Meaning, if you deposit $100, PrizePicks puts $100, matches it right back into your account. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for that instant deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy, made easy. All right, Brandon. So, talked about the vibes, the adjustment, the early adjustments, the maybe unnecessary adjustments. Let's talk about the big superstar players, the real heavyweights in this game. Another part of this, just to kind of carry over from the last segment, honestly, with the way that there were so much changed maybe sooner than I expected. Did you think that guys like Durant and Booker would be playing in the 40s from the jump of the playoffs? That shocked me to go into the game planning on that without even waiting to see whether the bench showed up or not.
I was not shocked, just because I know, just looking at the Suns bench, they need, even when those guys are on, they need at least one of Booker or Durant on the court at all times. And we saw tonight, some of those lineups just, they're just not getting the job done. And I think, wasting a Torrey Craig game where he scores 22 points, like if I would have told you Craig would score 22, Westbrook would have gone 3 for 19, and we'd win the turnover battle and we'd lose for the game, I would have called you crazy. So I just, to me, that's, there's obviously a few other factors that were in play in this whole situation. But I just think, at the end of the day, the Suns just, they're still trying to figure some things out chemistry wise. And the easiest solution for Monty, if you're a coach trying to desperately win a playoff game, is just play your stars heavy minutes. So he just kind of hit that panic button. It probably wasn't the plan, but when you're in the heat of the moment and you need to win, you need those guys on the court. So I wasn't too shocked, but probably wasn't plan A.
I guess it wasn't plan A, but, you know, maybe the second half was a little different. But, like, part of where I think that the Suns, like, take the end of the third quarter, for instance, right? They're in this situation that's a little bit weird where it's almost like Paul not playing as many minutes as those guys ends up meaning that there's only one of them on the court, but they didn't feel ready to play when there was only one of them on the court because they spent the whole end of the regular season once KD got back basically saying there's always going to be two of those guys on the court. Well, then there ended up being times when there weren't. And, like, I feel like there's a rotation. There is a version of the rotation where Paul and Durant are both on the court whenever it's a bench unit, or Booker and Ayton are on the court, or whatever. And there are always two. Tonight, that didn't happen for whatever reason. And it's just crazy to me where you have Kevin Durant playing 45 minutes, Devin Booker playing 43, and it still felt like there were too many lineups where there was not enough offense out there. And I think that hurt them. But I also, like, I did a whole, I don't think it was a whole show. It was one of my predictions going into the series. By the way, got the Torrey Craig I said he would be closing a lot of games. He ended up starting this game. Got that one right. But one I got way wrong is I thought that they would, at least early on in the series, just hang out a lot more with Durant off the ball. That just was working so well for them to close out the regular season. And I know that wasn't exactly the best competition, but I was just surprised that they went into the game and, like, they ran no Spain pick and roll in this game. It didn't feel like they ran any double drag in this game. A lot of the staple stuff that was working, it's like they came into it worried it wouldn't work and just, like, went away from it. It just felt like they jumped the gun on letting the Clippers be comfortable doing what they already knew they were going to do. It's like they overthought it and they're like, okay, well, here's 6 steps ahead. It's like, well, how about try to make them do the first step before you adjust to it? You know, that was really weird to me, even though a lot of the time it did work. It just felt like, oh, can we just run like a Chris Paul pick and roll with some options off of that and, like, see what happens?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. The Clippers kept it simple, and the Suns did not. It's really that simple. It feels like they're just trying to get a little too cute with it. And like you said, just overthinking things that, I think in order to make adjustments to your own offense, you should kind of go through your first read just to see if that's working. And if they take it away, then yeah, adjust your style based on how the game's going. But just to outright change it when you're not really attempting it was a little bit puzzling to me. But I thought Durant did make some excellent decisions with the ball. He was making some great passes. Obviously the 11 assists was, that was a great sign. But I think the Suns offense in general just flows better when it's more of that, the ball's just moving, being whipped around. And we saw it in flashes. We saw a few times where it looked like they're figuring it out. And then other times, like we said, it was just the offense was sputtering, and, it's going to happen. But they just need to get more consistent with the offense. And I just thought tonight was, it seemed like they're just trying to figure out on the fly. And the Clippers really just kind of controlled the tempo of the game, like you said, especially early on. And that, getting down by 16 early doesn't help.
No, and I think too, and you're right. I thought Durant, once he adjusted, he missed a bunch of shots to start. And then once he made a couple, got in rhythm, got to the free throw line a little bit, 11 assists, just 1 turnover. That's elite stuff when you are getting as much attention as he was. And Chris Paul did have 10 assists in this game, so maybe people are looking at that box score feeling like I'm going crazy saying that, but this was not a typical Chris Paul game. You mentioned, feeling like he was forcing shots a little bit. He just didn't feel comfortable, didn't look comfortable to me at all, and I think a lot of that is they just weren't running the stuff that makes him comfortable. But Durant did have the ball in his hands. He did about as much as you could hope for as a playmaker. Obviously not a huge scoring night. But yeah, to me, like, the other part I was going to say on the positive is they did also move the ball really well. And I thought they also pushed the tempo really well in the first quarter. Like, that was one thing that they did do, is you could tell they were trying to punish the Clippers transition defense. They were running off misses a lot early, not just turnovers. I thought that was a nice way to juice some things, but it's just weird when you have so much talent to play like you don't. Like, it felt like this a very similar type of playoff game to what we've seen from the Suns in the past. And I did not think I would come out of this game saying that because they have Kevin Durant on the team. Maybe they'll figure things out. I think they will, but I was expecting just hitting the ground running in a way that we did not see. On the Clippers side, you mentioned Russ with that series of offensive rebounds. He also played nice defense on on Devin Booker on that final scoring possession where the Suns had a sideline out of bounds. I think that's a spot where the lack of chemistry hurt them. They had to call a timeout there because they couldn't get Durant open coming off of a screen toward the top of the key there, which I think was where the ball was supposed to go. They end up just having to call timeout. Booker gets the ball, drives it for a layup, gets it blocked by Westbrook. That was a nice play. But I feel like this was one of the best on-ball defensive games that I've ever seen that guy play. Especially early on guarding KD at times where he was just getting into him, disrupting his dribble, all this stuff, and then some of those clutch plays at the end. That was really impressive. I know people probably don't want to hear me give a tip of the hat to Russell Westbrook here, but man, that's a big reason they won, even though he couldn't score at all.
Yeah, no, 100%. And going 3 for 19, that's kind of going to be the headline that, people like box score watchers will see, but his impact went way beyond that. I think, like you said, his disruption and energy on that had really kind of shifted the momentum early on. And that was a huge reason. I think, the Clippers came out with a little bit more of an edge, and, the Suns were, like you said, they were trying to push it on them and get some open looks early on. They just weren't hitting their shots. Yeah, I think, Westbrook's defense definitely played a huge role in that.
What did you think of Kawhi? Anything jump out to you? Anything that you were surprised by? Anything that you think the Suns should do more or less of against him? His numbers were great.
Yeah, no, Kawhi's he's just a Terminator, a basketball Terminator. He's just a machine, and it's pretty terrifying to see him on against your team, and that's just kind of what happened tonight. And that's why I kind of roll my eyes at the whole, Torrey Craig can do a better job guarding him than Okogie argument. It's like you don't guard Kawhi to shut him down. You guard him to disrupt him, take him out of his rhythm, and kind of like we saw Westbrook do with Durant. Like, obviously, Durant's a head taller than Westbrook, but what he was doing was driving into him, making him uncomfortable, which I don't think Torrey Craig really does defensively. He's just kind of there, and he tries. Like, I thought Craig did all he could on a lot of those shots. Kawhi's just a better shot maker, and there's nothing you could do about it. But, I think that's one thing Okogie, he gives you a different look defensively. Like, I'm not saying he's going to shut down Kawhi, but I think his ability to get into guys and that point of attack is something they really needed tonight, and they just didn't have it. And that's kind of the main reason why I'm going to keep harping on the Okogie train. But yeah, just to get back to your original point, Kawhi is just a basketball monster, and unfortunately, he just put on a masterclass performance tonight.
Yeah, it's hard to have much analysis, of Kawhi with this game to me, because he just kind of did what he needed to do. I feel like the biggest part of the most demoralizing stretch of him just being like a scoring robot is the end of that third quarter. Once again, to bring it back to that, the Suns were up 68-64 with 7 minutes and 29 seconds left to go. Or no, sorry, the Clippers were up. No, the Suns took the lead 77-68. That was their biggest lead at 4:42. And then the quarter ended tied 81-81. So, that's a 13-4 run. And Kawhi assisted on 2 of the shots and I believe made the other 2. And then there was a couple layups by Powell and Mann at the end. But that, I think by my quick math there, Kawhi either scored or assisted on 4 of the 6 buckets to lead that run. And I think that was probably the portion of the game where it's like, damn, he just does not make mistakes. He does not screw up. He just is going to create a good shot every single time down the court, either for himself or his teammates, no matter who he's out there with, because that was a bench lineup. And then I think obviously the fact that, he's able to hold up for 42 minutes in this game is pretty noteworthy too. That's not a given with that guy. But on the note of adjustments, Okogie some backup playmaking stuff. Cam Payne did not play in this game. Let's talk adjustments. Let's talk instinctive, overreactive adjustments here after the crazy hours of me trying to get out of the parking garage and bleary-eyed Sunday night takes here. We'll do that in a second. First, today's show also brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the planet, our favorite protein bar here at the Locked On Podcast Network. As you know, if you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want a ton of sugar and calories, you've got to try Built Bar. If you're like me, I'm always looking for healthy snacks. I bought like a pork jerky the other day. I've bought fruit leathers, whatever. There's just no really replacing a great, sweet, delicious protein bar. There really isn't. There's nothing like it. It gets you everything you need, and it tastes delicious. Built, there's nothing better than that. It's the best of the best. They maintain that amazing flavor and taste, but also great macros, whether it's a coconut brownie puff or a strawberry traditional bar. You're not really crossing 5 grams of sugar with the Built Bar. You're not really crossing 150 calories, but you're always getting 15 to 20 grams of protein. And now, in addition to Built.com, you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy section at a Walmart, get a small 4-bar box, maybe Sam's Club run, get a big jumbo 13-bar box, or the old-fashioned route, Built.com, mix and match, make a combo box, get your favorites. Whatever suits you, Walmart, Sam's Club, Built.com, get yours today. All right, closing things out, 115-110, Phoenix Suns loss in Game 1. Brandon Dueñas is joining us here as he does every single Monday, and it's a Game 1 Monday in this case. Let's break it down here adjustment-wise, Brandon. So I want to emphasize one thing because I do feel like people are underestimating the absence of Cameron Payne. And I can already hear the audience's eyes rolling when I say that a little bit because he's nobody's favorite player. He is inconsistent. I understand all of that. But I don't have a lot of patience for Suns fans on Twitter and wherever else when I see every single bench player, people calling for their head as if they're all awful. And when I see that, when I feel that, when I'm watching the game, and obviously the box score, they scored 10 bench points as a team, would tell you that weren't great. Let's start thinking about why instead of just that they all are bad at basketball, right? Cameron Payne, whether you like him or hate him, he's the third longest tenured Sun at this point. And Monty trusts him, and I do feel like even though he makes mistakes, he knows this offense, he understands this offense, he knows his teammates, he knows what Monty would want the offense to get as far as shots in that moment, what Chris Paul would be looking for, and he does his best to get him there. Maybe it's not always perfect, but when I look at guys not getting good shots, not getting threes, not getting whatever, Okogie not having a real role, you felt the absence of Cameron Payne a ton in this game, in my opinion, and I think he warmed up pregame. I saw him walking around. Did not look like he was in any sort of severe amount of pain. I would imagine he is a decent shot to play in Game 2, and I even just think that would make a world of difference, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to anyone rolling their eyes, just go look back at the last time these two teams played. I know Payne's not going to do that every night, go for 29 and 9, 0 turnovers, Game 2, just masterclass. But one thing he can do is he provides rim pressure, and he has the ability to swing a game, and just getting downhill and creating open looks in transition, something I thought they missed tonight. They only shot 23s. Like, that's another thing that they have to bump that number up. And I think that starts with just the ball movement, because that's where you get those open looks. And it just seems like there's too much waiting around with people just trying to figure out what to do in the offense instead of just going out there and doing it. And, love him or hate him, that's what Cam Payne is known for. He'll go out there. Some nights it's not working, but he's going to go 100%. He's going to go hard and make plays happen. And tonight, there's not a lot of initiative, I thought, in certain stretches of the game that they could have used that boost. But yeah, it's just, like we've talked about, just the, point book lineups, or anytime, Chris Paul's not out there, it's tough to really, get the offense clicking.
The point book lineups, I want to not overreact to one game, but it's not really overacting to one game because I've watched this team for years. I just think in the playoffs, the level of greatness that you have to shoulder a very like offensively weak supporting cast and you're the end-all be-all scorer in that lineup in a playoff situation against a team with the Clippers where, they're not an elite defense. They played very well tonight, but they still allowed 110 points, and it wasn't the fastest game ever. You know, they're not a stopper team, but they have length. They have ways to muck up the first action that a team wants to run. And I just don't know how many players are in the league. Durant's one of them. I don't know if Booker is one of them. That you can put some of the types of lineups we saw where it was like Landry Shamet, Josh Okogie, Ish Wainwright, and Bismack Biyombo, and Devin Booker. Like, that's not going to get the job done, you know? It's just not going to be good enough. Yeah, the end of the first quarter, Monty went Book, Shamet, Okogie, Wainwright, Biyombo for like 2 minutes, and then he had to panic bring Durant back in because he was like, okay, that's not working. So I don't think that can happen anymore. He said he was doing that for defense, but I don't think you can survive putting so little offensive talent out there because Booker has to be so good, and he's just not going to be able to do much with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think another thing, and just in general, is like playoff rotations being shorter are beneficial just for guys to get rhythm. Like, I know there's adjustments you could want to make on the fly, especially in the first game of the series. So I get it, playing a few guys like 4 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it was. But I think trying to eliminate that and just get guys a chance to get a rhythm, that just kind of helps with the flow of the game too, instead of just kind of throwing some panic lineups out there like you were talking about. But one thing I also wanted to shout out is Booker's defense tonight. Like, we're talking about his offensively, getting downhill, attacking the rim stuff he did, but defensively I thought it was one of his best games in terms of just being a disruptor, getting in the passing lanes, blocking shots, just kind of making plays happen. He took a charge that was huge at the time. So just doing the little things that we've come to know, but we just hearing it on the broadcast too, with them pointing it out, just, giving him his flowers on that end. It seems like, we've come full circle with that whole, Booker doesn't play defense narrative. We can finally put that to rest. But shout out to Book for that defensive performance.
Yeah, some of my friends over at Dime were tweeting about, Durant is such a great teammate for Booker to get, because when Durant comes into a team and shows that even he's going to commit to the defensive end, it really leaves no option for anyone else not to. And I was like, it did not start in February that Devin Booker was locked in defensively, especially in the postseason, and especially one-on-one. Like, that's been happening, Yep. See, I thought he did really well against Kawhi. He had the steal that, was starting to go viral where he did the MJ knock it out and save it back to your teammate for the full court transition dunk. And he had lots of great plays. I mean, look, he had 4 steals and 3 blocks. So that kind of speaks for itself. Very correct for you to shout him out on that. I hope I'm not being too negative, but look, I think people are feeling down, so I want to kind of meet that where it is. But you're right, he did play well. So, yeah, I think your note on the rotation is a good one. Like, instead of 7 for Wainwright and 7 for Okogie, can we just do 14 for Okogie, right? Instead of 5 for Biyombo and 8 for Landale, can you just give Landale 13, right? And maybe Landry Shamet, maybe let's split that in half and actually go 12 and 12 for somebody else. Which brings me to one question that I had, because we've talked a lot about other adjustments already kind of over the course of the show at this point. With the Craig Okogie stuff, the offense weirdness, and different things there. I just don't get why TJ Warren has to work so hard to get minutes. I understand there's a very Popovichian thing going on, I think, with Monty wanting him to, play the right way and always make the right decisions, and you're not gonna, you're gonna have to earn it and this and that. But at a certain point, it's line up all the guys. How many of them can credibly play both ends of the court? There's 7 on this roster. He's one of them. Put him on the floor. I don't know how much more complicated it has to be than that. I don't know what the lineups are. I'm not not trying to say I'm smarter than the coaching staff, but it's that guy's just better than a lot of people who have been getting minutes for this team.
I agree. Yeah, I think Warren at this point deserves at least a shot. The fact that they didn't test it out, it could be something we see next game, but it wouldn't shock me if we didn't either, because that's just kind of how it's gone this season with him. But I think this is a series he could survive. Like if you're going to throw Terrence Ross out there, like TJ Warren's a better defender than Ross at this point. He has size, and they need some offensive firepower. That Warren scores in a very unique way. That obviously Ross provides more of that microwave score. With Payne, if Payne does miss another game, then having Ross out there for that purpose could make some sense. But I do think that Warren at this point deserves a shot because it's not like we're cutting out a 6 man of the year candidate out of the rotation to give him a shot. Like we look at those lineups out there and it was pretty brutal. So I'm with you. Give TJ Tony Buckets a shot. The worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, and move on.
Clippers are a type of team too where it's like they're not really going to go aggressively at hunting mismatches. Like at times, sure, but mostly they're going to take the first good shot they get. That's kind of how they play. And so it's like, is it really a liability for a team like that? It's not like it's Luka or LeBron where they're pointing out the weakest guy and you have to be able to survive. Otherwise you can't play. It's not really like that. So I don't understand it. All right. Anything last words for this game? We can go positive. We can go adjustment stuff. Anything else on your mind before we wrap up here?
I'll just keep repeating it that we need more Okogie. Like this has to be, at least I think we're going to look back at this and kind of say, why was Okogie not playing sooner? As we look towards like the end of the series, I think he's going to be a huge factor in the series. I'll stand by that take I had before the series started. I think he's going to have a breakout game, and they just need that energy, and just please rebound the damn ball. Like there's been so many instances where a lot of them are kind of like lucky 50-50 tips or just bounces going the Clippers' way, but some of those are also it's just effort. Knowing where your man is, boxing out. You could point that in whichever direction you want. Certain center that got a max contract was involved in a few of those, but there's also
how many offensive rebounds did he have tonight?
I believe 0.
I didn't say his name for the whole show, everybody. You should really thank me. But I mean, come on. Like, yeah, of course he's a culprit on that.
Yeah. And it's not just, it doesn't all fall on DeAndre to rebound the ball every single time, but there's a few possessions where you just got to find your man, put a body on Zubac, because that's one thing that he will do. And I think DeAndre knows that. We've seen him adjust, and he's had some big playoff games, but I just thought, the activity on the glass tonight was pretty soft across the board, not just him, just literally across the board. This team just didn't bring it on that end. And like I said, the Clippers got some bounces that went their way too. That's going to happen, but there needs to be more effort on the glass, because you can't, work your ass off for 20 seconds defensively and then just, give up a second chance. That just tires the defense out. And even if they don't convert on the basket and they reset, get another possession, the defense is just putting more work in that. They shouldn't have to. So that's my main.
And you're not going to probably be able to run off that, because then the offense is even more,
exactly
ready. It's not a live ball kind of situation anymore. If it's a putback attempt, even if it does miss. Yeah, I don't think it was all DeAndre by any means. But let me just put it this way. I feel like if you can rebound better, if you can limit the impact that Zubac and Plumlee are able to have, to get back to the idea of who adjusts first, you put the Clippers back into a position of not being able to play those bigs. The Suns were very close at times, I think, to forcing Ty Lue's hand. And I think if they had been able to finish off that third quarter run, maybe make a little bit of a push in the fourth quarter, you would have seen some small ball lineups. But one of those two guys was out there for every single second of this game. That should not always be the case. Like, DeAndre Ayton's definitely better than Mason Plumlee. I even think that Jock Landale, can play in such a way that Plumlee is at a disadvantage. And if you stretch those guys out, execute better on offense, rebound better so that they're not getting that advantage, you start to limit what those guys can do. And then Ty Lue has to say, okay, that's not working. I'm going to put Batum at the 5. I'm going to put Covington at the 5. I'm going to put Morris at the 5 because I'm scared of what the Suns are doing. That just didn't happen tonight, which again, to come full circle, was the craziest part to me, that it felt like this team with so much talent was on the defensive all night and having to kind of react to the game when they are the better team. They were favored like minus 500 for the series. It just should not be played on the Clippers' terms. I'm not saying the Clippers proved tonight they are going to make this a series, but that doesn't mean you have to play afraid of them or overthink and overreact to what they might do or could do or have done in the past. So that's my final thought. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm hoping to rewatch this game tomorrow during the day and then do another deep dive on what we saw and what we might see in Game 2. We'll see what the timing looks like there. But either way, I will definitely have a preview of Game 2 for all of you on Tuesday morning. You can check Brandon's writing out at Bright Side of the Sun. They are doing great coverage over there as well. The Everydayers, look forward to the preview. In the meantime, everybody go check out Locked On Sports Today as your second listen on Monday. Get caught up on everything from the whole playoffs. That show's available on all podcast platforms as well. And we'll catch you tomorrow.